Hello, and welcome back to UnKind TV. I'm Martha, and tonight I will be discussing The Real Housewives of Orange County, Season 15, Episode 9, The Lies That Bind. Time to relive the beginning of COVID. The coronavirus pandemic forces Bravo to shut down production, and the ladies have to self-film. There's a reason these shows have producers and writers, because the content the ladies put out of themselves was not so good. What we see is what we all experienced early on. Haha, no self-care, we're in pajamas all day, no makeup, no getting your hair done. The complete lack of self-care, letting the kids do whatever they want. Elizabeth is doing puzzles. She has grand plans to help animals. It doesn't start to get interesting until they are well into lockdown. Braunwyn starts to transform into Mommy Dearest, or rather, I think she was always Mommy Dearest. We just didn't see it as much. But the Joan Crawford is coming out in full swing. By the way, you can't see, but this thing just above Betty Davis is Joan Crawford. One day I'm going to have to move that down. I feel like it's not fair. That was from Lauren B., who's been a viewer for a long time. So thank you to Lauren. Joan, I'm sorry to invoke your name in the context of Braunwyn Wyndham Burke. Braunwyn, being very down to earth, shares that she hasn't been without a housekeeper since she was a teenager. I know, I remember that part of quarantine really was hard on me too. She also doesn't know how to use a washing machine. She is very confused by all the settings. Do I use normal? Warm? Sean? Wait, what's delicates? And she has set hours for the kitchen. She's filming Sean going into the kitchen and he hurts his finger and she says, "That's karma for going in my kitchen at 2 p.m. Full-blown psycho. Out of everybody you'd have to be quarantined with, I think Braunwyn would be the worst. She's in early recovery and she was already insane. Oh, and by the way, I know a lot of you asked me, how could Braunwyn be an alcoholic? If she took breaks from drinking to have the kids, it's not adding up. Once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. Even if you stop drinking for long periods of time, you're still an alcoholic. I guess the closest thing, this is kind of gruesome, but I would compare it to serial killers who have a cooling off period. They go on a spree and then they go 15 years where they don't do anything. They just live like normal family people and you'd have no idea that they did this. They're still a serial killer. So it's the same with Braunwyn. She was using her pregnancies to stop, but it doesn't mean that she wasn't an alcoholic. I think she is dishonest and shifty about a lot of things, but I just wanted to clarify that you can have breaks in your actual consumption of alcohol and still be an alcoholic. Now Emily, Kelly, and Braunwyn get together in the park. Emily realizes that they have it made quarantining in OC. They have big houses, they've got a beach around the corner, but she says her kids want her, no matter how much space they have, and she can't get a minute to herself. Kelly gets a talking head that she has since apologized for. She says, "This whole thing's overblown. It's crazy to shut down the whole economy." I don't know why any of them think that they have some kind of soapbox to be spouting off these opinions, but she's doing damage control now. She was on Watch What Happens Live apologizing for being dumb, basically. On my list of Kelly Dodd's greatest offenses, this isn't that bad, I guess, because it just started and she's contrite now. Kelly mentions that Jolie's going to be visiting her father and Kelly will be traveling to New York to see her fiance, Rick. And Braunwyn says that she can't imagine abandoning your child in a global pandemic for a booty call. Braunwyn did plenty of traveling, #HotGirlSummer, all over her Instagram. It wasn't at the beginning of the pandemic, but Braunwyn did plenty of traveling without her children. And I don't think anyone would call Braunwyn Mother of the Year. And now Braunwyn has gone totally cold on Elizabeth. She's fuming because Elizabeth posted on Instagram, and we see it. It annoyed me too. It really did. That COVID is overblown, and why didn't they shut down the whole country over the AIDS epidemic? We saw her in another episode going, "This is all cooked up by Big Pharma to make a vaccine and make everyone get it." She had the crazy eyes and all that. It is completely asinine to say something like that. As Emily pointed out, the way coronavirus is transmitted is very different from the way HIV is transmitted. It's ignorant on so many levels. I think Elizabeth is not too quick on the uptake to begin with, but on top of that, she's completely Looney Tunes, so I don't know why anybody is surprised. But Braunwyn takes it a step further. She says that post isn't the only reason she's done with Elizabeth. She says that Elizabeth isn't honest, open, and genuine, and that's who she wants around her. Braunwyn is so high on the list of fake housewives. This woman is contrived and manufactured every little thing. She's the alcoholism storyline, and I do think she's an alcoholic, but she chose to get sober for the show. She said that herself, by the way, in an Instagram comment. Now she's a lesbian. She left Sean. She's living her truth. I mean, maybe she really is. I always thought both of them were gay, but she reveals these things in such a planned way to keep herself relevant. And for her to call anyone not honest or genuine enough is just laughable. And now Shannon Bedour is freaking out because, look, she's living with a million teenagers and John, and she tried to lay down the law. Either you're going to stay with me or stay somewhere else, but you can't be going back and forth seeing your friends. You have a house full of teenagers, your own and your partner's. It's very hard. Shannon already has a pre-existing condition that affects her lungs, and she's in a house full of teenagers, and teenagers don't listen. So I can see why Shannon was a little alarmed. Kelly is visiting my city of New York, and she's showing how scary and empty and barren it has become. It was jarring when the pandemic first hit. New York did become a ghost town. You could hear a pin drop on the street. I kind of enjoyed the quiet for a while, and I would go for walks and just enjoy the city. Everybody came back, though, by the way. It is not a ghost town. It's not destroyed. It's back to being its crazy usual self. You can't keep New York down. This is being filmed right at the very beginning of when New York was hit the hardest. So it makes what Kelly did even more insane now that I think about it. She flew to New York when New York was the worst of the worst with COVID. She had no problem flying here to be with her man. And that's what we see, a montage of Kelly and Rick being stupid. I have no interest in these two. She's having a hot dog. He's doing her nails. He says he didn't know she had fake boobs. And she gets a talking head saying Jolie is fine with her father and Rick is all alone and there's nothing that was going to keep her from her guy. You be the judge. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't think Jolie was abandoned. I don't think I'd paint it that way, but I do think Kelly took chances that were unnecessary. And I think that she and Rick have the mentality of 16-year-olds. We check in with Emily, and Emily's house is a complete wreck, but she's in better spirits. She says that she realizes she and Shane are so fortunate to be able to get by without working, and she really feels for people who are unemployed. Shane is cleaning. The kids are being nuts, and Emily says despite their past problems, the quarantine has been okay for them. She was worried given the history that being on lockdown might fracture their marriage, but they're doing quite well. It's good to see. Back at the Crawford residence, Braunwyn is turning on Sean badly, and it's ugly, and I don't think it's funny. It's abusive. I'm watching this, and I just feel bad for everybody stuck in this house with her. She's attacking him for every little thing. She's being passive-aggressive. She's taping him and complaining about all the noise he makes, and then he goes to close a window, and she goes, "Don't close that. I opened that to listen to the rain." "Yes, Mommy dearest. Of course you wanted the window open to listen to the rain." Braunwyn's filming herself privately, and she's like, "I feel like the only grown-up in this house. I'm the only one who lives in the real world, where people are dying, and Sean's in everything's gonna be okay land." I think her poor parentified child, Rowan, is the only grown-up in that house, and then Igor, her husband, would be the runner-up. I don't think Braunwyn is doing anything except completely terrorizing her whole family. And what a concept that your 870 children might need someone to say, hey, everything's gonna be all right. When they're in a global pandemic, they can't go to school. It's very scary for children and teens at this time. Why would you be so mad at Sean for telling the kids it's going to be okay? They don't need to hear doom and gloom constantly to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Now Gina and Shannon FaceTime, and Gina says, Shannon called me and she was pretty sauced. Pretty sauced. I had a friend who couldn't do voice to text with me because she had such a thick Long Island accent like that. I told her to do voice dictation. Consider the source of the sauce. And all I got was consider the source of the sauce. The source of the sauce. It reminded me of that. Anyway, Gina says that Shannon was like really sauce about John not taking this lockdown seriously, and now she took him back. So it seems John was back and forth, not quite respecting Shannon's lockdown rules, and she was losing her mind, and she called Gina, and then John came back all emotional, and Shannon let him back in. But Gina points out that he wasn't quarantining, so if he has exposed Shannon, that's it. And she feels like Shannon put her health at risk to keep this guy happy and maintain the relationship. I mean, I don't like John. I don't know what you guys think. I know I've skipped a couple of episodes, but when I saw him coddling her when she was really drunk, I could tell this guy doesn't really want to be in this relationship. It seems like this is a financial arrangement more than anything. And I don't want to say that, like, I don't want to be mean. I feel bad for Shannon. I want Shannon to be with someone who truly loves her and is a good soul. But this guy's starting to get more and more sketchy. And if you really love someone, you truly love Shannon Storms-Bedore, then you love her and all her neuroses. And if Shannon Storms-Bedore has a lung condition and you're in a pandemic with a virus that attacks all the organs, you take it seriously. You don't go in and out and blow her off. And it's her house. I don't like that. And she says that he came to her all emotional. Oh, I bet he was emotional. He probably has no money. Maybe I'm wrong. You let me know in the comments what you think of John. I think of Dirty John. You know the podcast? Oh, yeah, it was a show on Bravo, Dirty John. It was a guy in OC who took advantage of a Shannon Bedore type. Kind of like Brooks. I don't think John is as bad as Brooks by a long shot, but something phony there. He's all about this. We get to see how the housewives finagled toilet paper for themselves when there was a shortage. Very compelling television. Kelly is FaceTiming with Jolie. It turns out that Kelly got stuck in New York, and she thought Jolie was only going to be with her father for a week. Now it's going on longer because Kelly can't leave New York. And she gets to talking and saying, how was I going to know New York was the epicenter? I didn't know that. Yes, you did. Because what she shows when she comes to New York is that it's empty. And I can tell you as a New Yorker, by the time New York looked like that, we knew how bad it was. That's when everybody was on full lockdown. Everyone got the hell out of Dodge. So Kelly knew. I am not falling for this. How was I supposed to know? You had to have known that was at least a possibility. Then Jolie's going back and forth arguing with Kelly about the severity of the virus and when it first got here, when it didn't. And Kelly gets to talking where she goes, teenagers think they know everything. Know-it-alls. Ironic, yeah. Now we're with Elizabeth again, and I don't know why Bravo insists on giving a platform to this idiot. She goes on again about, I don't know if this is a real virus or something cooked up by Big Pharma or a real virus that came from a monkey, but I'm going crazy. We don't need to hear that. We get it. We know she's a denier and she's Fruit Loops. I know we don't want to censor people, but I also feel like Bravo has to be a little bit more responsible in how many times they're going to air this nonsense. And then she's crying that she's shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars for her divorce. I feel bad that she's crying. It's just hard to feel much for her in general because we don't know what's going on. She wants to get divorced. She doesn't want to get divorced. She's texting the guy that she's sorry they're divorcing. I just feel for this woman in general because I don't think she's wrapped too tight. Braunwyn is taking a drive with Sean just to get some air. That's actually how I got through the worst of the lockdown. I used to drive down to the beach at sunset and just loop back around and never get out of the car. It was just a way to get some ocean air, see light, and then come back without having contact with humanity. But anyway, Braunwyn says she's really worried that once this is over, people are going to go crazy partying. But because they've been restricted for so long, and that's going to be very hard on her. And Sean says, well, we'll go away and we'll come back when they've partied so much that they don't want to party anymore. And she just gets this look and says, you're making light of it. Okay. I didn't get that at all. I thought he was just trying to say something comforting. Maybe he just shouldn't speak at all. And then if he doesn't speak at all, she'll say, thanks for being so supportive. Yikes. Braunwyn's complaining that she can't get to meetings, but that's true. Meetings were shut down because of COVID. There was no safe way to have meetings, and they have them on Zoom even now, and it's not the same. It's just not the same as showing up and being with those people, but it doesn't excuse her behavior, especially not what happens right after this. I'm not buying that not being able to go to meetings and sobriety is what's making Braunwyn act this way. I think she was always insufferable. It's just that now she's putting it all out there to stay on the show. So it's 3 hours later and she's filming from her closet. And Braunwyn tells us that she didn't know how to use the vacuum. We've all been there, huh? And Sean apparently belittled her, that she didn't know how to use it. I don't think that's actually the case. I think Braunwyn feels belittled by anything that Sean says. And she doesn't know how to use a vacuum cleaner. And yeah, you get made fun of for being a dingbat. And she smacked him. And then she talks about how she has hit him before. She attacked him in Aspen and her children saw it. And there's just no excuse. Her behavior is completely unacceptable and disgusting. And it's no surprise her daughter is on Twitter liking tweets that criticize Braunwyn as a parent and point out her instability. Like, she just renewed her vows very passionately with Sean, and now she's a lesbian, and she always knew she was a lesbian, and she's happy to be living her truth. I mean, it's roller coaster behavior from her. I thought it was very telling that Jacob kind of ruin their vows. I mean, I thought it was funny. I love awkward situations, so anything like that cracks me up. When he was like, do you vow to love mom when she embezzles all your money? And do you vow to love dad when he takes off with the 12-year-old model? I was like, what? It was really weird. And it was funny when I was watching it, but then I stepped back and I'm like, that's the kid saying something's really wrong here and that this is one big sham. This vow renewal is bullshit. Okay, now the restrictions are loosening up a bit. This is much later into the pandemic, and Braunwyn, Emily, and Shannon go have a visit at Kelly's house outside. Gina is not there, and Shannon thinks Gina isn't there because Gina has just been hanging out with Tamrat. And Shannon reveals that Tamrat has stopped being her friend, and Shannon gave up so much to dedicate to her friendship to Tamrat that now there's this void. What does it say about Shannon that Tamrat was such a huge part of her life that she now feels a void in her absence? Like, we all know Tamra's evil, and Shannon gave so much to that relationship that now she has an emptiness because Tamra won't talk to her. And now we begin the Elizabeth pile-on. Shannon is very mad at Elizabeth because Elizabeth had told everyone Shannon berated her boyfriend Jimmy, and that's why he took off from Braunwyn's vow renewal. The truth is, and this is also from Elizabeth's mouth, Jimmy left the vow renewal. They were all staying in a hotel, and he left early in the morning to go to work. But Shannon doesn't appreciate that Elizabeth made it sound like he took off because he was so upset over Shannon. So Shannon is now planting seeds and instigating. And Emily calls her the Regina George of the group. And then Kelly gets a talking head where she says that Shannon is the puppet master. Yes, she is. She wants them all to go after Elizabeth, and it's working, especially with Braunwyn. But Kelly says, look, Elizabeth is a good person. I kind of get that impression as well. I think she's good-hearted, but she makes things up out of her insecurity. Kelly says, she's like a blowfish. She puffs up to be defensive. Come at me. But now Braunwyn is on the case. And now Braunwyn and Emily are FaceTiming, and Braunwyn says Shannon egged her on. She told her that she's known Elizabeth for about a year and that not everything is as it seems with her finances, and you go find out for yourself. Typical Shannon, right? She's not getting the hands of Shannon Bedore dirty. Braunwyn takes the bait, and Braunwyn is looking up Elizabeth's financial records and her houses and who does she have loans and defaulting and whatever. Elizabeth has debts, or she's not as rich as she seems, or needs help paying her legal bills. I don't see a smoking gun here. Like all the housewives, she makes herself seem richer than she is, and she's having financial difficulties as a result of going through this divorce. Big whoop. Emily says that she would like to see the documents, even though she feels like this is invasive and she wouldn't like it if it were done to her. It is invasive. I mean, I will totally look somebody up if it's worth it. If it's an issue of, is this a dangerous person? Like, do we need to do a background check? This guy's making me feel uncomfortable. Let's look into it. But I mean, because what, you're bored? You have nothing better to do? You want to look up Elizabeth's finances? Like, what has Elizabeth done to hurt you? Has she been dishonest and a little bit shifty with her stories? Yeah, but she's kind of just there. I don't think she's done any harm to anyone. So what is the purpose of humiliating her? Gina and Elizabeth are FaceTiming, and Gina is saying that she's lucky that Matt is still taking the kids, so she has a little bit of a break every now and then. And she's like, I predict that divorces are going to be really high because of COVID. She was right. And Elizabeth says, you know what? This whole situation has pushed her to just settle the divorce, stop fighting, drop the need to win, stop and smell the roses. And Elizabeth wants to take the girls on a trip up to Arrowhead. It's about an hour away, and we'll all get COVID tested right before we go. Now, Braunwyn and Shannon, we're cutting back and forth. Those two are hanging out and talking shit about Elizabeth. Braunwyn is annoyed that everything Elizabeth told her is not really true. Well, you know what, Braunwyn? Everything you say is not true. And as far as we know, Elizabeth isn't beating up Jimmy in front of children. Elizabeth is telling Gina she's aware of what's been going on, how they're investigating her, and she's not really impressed, but she just felt like she couldn't quite be honest about her situation while she was going through the divorce, and she's looking forward to being more open. And Gina gets it because she went through it with Matt, and she feels like once Elizabeth sets the record straight, the group will accept her. I don't know if the divorce is the whole reason Elizabeth was giving different stories to different people. Maybe it comes from her upbringing, whatever. I just don't see how she's done anything so bad that we've now gotten several scenes dedicated to putting her under the microscope. I don't think there's much to see. Braunwyn and Shannon continue being mean about Elizabeth, and I just think this is Braunwyn's toxic behavior yet again. She wants to take attention off herself and her insanity by going after the newbie. She knows what it's like to be the newbie, and now she's going to repeat it. They all went after her. Now she's going to get them all to go after Elizabeth. I mean, Shannon started it, but Braunwyn is the one who's like gladly pursuing this idea that Elizabeth is a con artist and she has a whole phony story, and it's blown out of proportion. Gina tells Elizabeth the reason she wasn't at that get-together where Shannon blamed Gina's outing with Tamrat. Actually, the reason Gina didn't go is because Shannon said you have to hear what we're going to talk about when it comes to Elizabeth, and Gina wasn't comfortable participating. Gina's quickly becoming my favorite. She really is. We go to commercial and come back to some major intensity. Bravo puts titles on the screen. We get headlines about the murder of George Floyd. They show scenes of protests in New York, in LA, and then they show us how the different housewives were participating in that. I thought Gina came across the most sincere. She's talking to Giselle from Potomac, and she's like, white people don't even want to acknowledge racism, like in the littlest things, like we have an obligation. I get the feeling that Gina is truly committed to learning and having these conversations that are uncomfortable and wanting to be better, in contrast to Braunwyn, who we see protesting. I know there are people who feel like Braunwyn is the queen. Braunwyn has been the most progressive liberal in OC, and it's very conservative and backwards, and she feels she's like the rebel, and she's really trying to wake up, and she's accountable that she's tuned out racism her whole life. And I just can't help but see it as performative. I want to say something positive about this. I think it's always a good thing when we're trying to grow and change for the better. But when it comes to Braunwyn, I just don't believe anything this woman says or does is coming from a good place. I feel like it's all about image. I feel like Braunwyn knew her storyline with sobriety and being a toxic psycho was not going to be popular, and she saw an opportunity to set herself apart from the group. She knows OC is very conservative. This is a group of women that tends to say things that really offend people. Their attitudes are a little bit backwards. So I'm going to be the progressive. I'm going to be the one who takes the mantle. I'm going to be the one who makes them show how racist they are. I just feel like it's calculated. I don't believe that her heart is in, I really want to see what I've been ignoring all my privileged life. I think that she just wanted to make the other women look bad. You let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe I'm being too hard on her. Maybe she really does care. But just take a moment and think about Gina and then think about Braunwyn. These are two people who responded by saying, we need to change, things need to move forward. Racism is a huge problem, but one of them is genuine and one of them is putting on a show. We end with Shannon totally hysterical. She's FaceTiming Kelly Dodd. She is at urgent care. Her daughter has tested positive for coronavirus. She's feeling ill. She keeps getting tests done repeatedly and she's coming up negative. And I think she's more and more upset because she knows she probably has it at this point and she just wants to get the diagnosis over with. I know someone that this happened to, where the whole family had it, but she came up positive first, and then her kids were symptomatic, and one came up positive immediately, and another one was negative and then positive. The husband was symptomatic, and they couldn't get a positive test, so they all quarantined. It does give you a lot of anxiety, and I actually feel really bad for Shannon because she didn't think that she could get it because she's so strict with her rules, and her twins snuck off to a party where nobody had masks on, and they brought COVID home. So we don't have the confirmed diagnosis yet, but I think we know Shannon has COVID. And that's it for this episode. As always, let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments. Please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't. You can follow UnKind TV on Instagram and Twitter, and you can find more information about UnKind TV in the description box below every video. I will see you soon to talk more about Real Housewives. Oh, and I will be bringing back movie night. What I was doing for a while was screening a classic film on Friday nights where we could all live chat with each other while we watched the movie. So that will be coming back. I'll post about it on the community page. I'll let you know what movie I'm screening and what time, and I hope to see you there. Just another little escape. I find it fun, and I posted a poll on Instagram, and people all voted that they wanted to have that back. So I will be sure to let anyone interested know well in advance all the details. Take care. Bye.